This is the Fuel Sports Network.
Behold the King of Kings.
We couldn't do diddly poo.
I'm dropping the hammer.
No, you're not.
And that's the bottom line.
Here, have a quarter, make a phone call.
I have wrestled with an alligator.
What?
I done tussled with a whale.
What?
I done handcuffed lightning, throw thunder in jail.
Funky butt loving. Did he say funky butt loving?
There's no crying. There's no crying in baseball.
Let the big dog eat.
Woo! Whoa! Woo! Whoa! Woo! 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 It's time!
What does the guy say? What did I talk about last week on this very show about the Cardinals organization in St. Louis in Major League Baseball and their continued efforts to take this once great and revered organization and run it into the ground? It is sad. It is upsetting, disturbing, however you want to phrase it, with the Cardinals organization in St. Louis and with the inept leadership that continues to destroy the once wonderful product of St. Louis Cardinal baseball within the minds of the fans. I love how there continues to be these excuses for the organization within the certain elements of the fan base, that they continue to try to, kind of put lipstick on a pig, so to speak, and make it look better than it actually is. The excuses for the absolute dismal showing of fan support these last few games at Busch Stadium in St. Louis and this last series of games that were played there, when you have the San Diego Padres announcing team talking about how disturbing, upsetting, eye-opening that the lackluster support of fans at this time of year, you're coming into the height of playoff baseball, which has been synonymous in the Cardinal fandom for many, many years, up until these last few. We've had the installation of multiple different managers, multiple different hitting coaches, multiple different pitching coaches. In basic math, when you're in any kind of a math class, one of the very first things in a kind of getting into somewhat advanced math in your elementary years and things of that nature is what's called a common denominator. And those of us who understand basic math and math skills understand that common denominators, you have some thread of connection within the problem. I explained it and laid it out last week's show. Go back, check it out here on the Fuel Sports Network. It's there. Go to the Facebook and social pages. It's there. Go back and watch it. I'm not going to get into that. The only thing I'm going to get into is going forward. I called last week. The one thing I will touch on, I did call last week for the termination, the immediate termination with extreme prejudice of one John Mozeliak and Michael Gersh. What did we get? Oh, he's going to finish out his contract to 2025, and he's going to oversee a seamless transition. Folks, I'm going to tell you what this is. That the writing is on the wall. They care so little about the product at this point that they're just going to allow it to just do its natural thing. They know that John Mozeliak is on the back 40. From my neck of the woods, it's an old saying, what we used to say when you're pretty much done. You're just coasting at that point. He's done. Now, does he intentionally want the team to tank? No, I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is the drive just really isn't there anymore. And when the interest isn't there and the drive isn't there, maybe you should be thinking about potentially moving on to another pasture, moving on to another mindset, potentially. Why would you want to do that? Well, change of pace, different mentalities, different approaches. Tony La Russa had his heyday, just like Sparky Anderson had his heyday, just like Jim Leland had his heyday, just like Joe Torre had his heyday. I think Joe Torre was a decent manager. I think that Joe Torre succeeded specifically due to the Yankees organization and what they had built, what George Steinbrenner had built. And again, checks and balances. That's the most important core key component to any of this stuff and why it has the success that it has. Checks and balances. During the Cardinals era of success, from the entry of Tony La Russa, Dave Duncan, and the great Walt Jocketty, the reason that had success was because there was proper checks and balances from the top all the way down through to the bottom. You had different mindsets, you had different thought processes, you had different approaches, but you had a different approach to the game and how the business was ran. At this point, just face palm. I'm doing the old Captain Picard, face palm. This organization has become a laughing stock. They've become a joke. It's just sell the team because we know that's where you're going. What are you waiting for? Just sell it. You've made it clear that you're just trying to milk whatever last little bit of cash you can out of this cow before you turn around and you sell it at market and get everything you can out of it. It's laughable. It's embarrassing for the fans. You want to know why you've had the lowest attendance in the history of Busch Stadium 3? Do I need to go back to the 70s? Do I need to talk about that? I don't think I do. The reality of the situation is there's a lot of other different, aspects of what's going on here. I don't want to get too deep into the weeds because it just doesn't really make any sense. The truth is now it's just a joke. I gave him an opportunity last week on the show. I went on my tirade. I had said what I needed to say. I got it out there. Did the organization listen? Nope. Did they do what they wanted to do? Yep. Are they going to change? Probably not. I'm not going to dwell on this too much longer because, we're out of our first segment. So I'll just leave it at this. The Cardinals organization has some very, very deep soul searching to do. They are going to nuclearize their fan base for several years to come. Fans won't come back if you keep going down this road. I've been one of them that have left the product behind because I'm so embarrassed by what you've put out there. I don't even care to watch the product anymore. I don't care to go to the product anymore. So take that into account. The Cardinals aren't the only organization that I've had this issue with over the years. Speaking of organizations and groups that I've had issues with over the years, Michelle Smallman, St. Louis girl, been around St. Louis sports media for quite some time. And she's made her rounds at ESPN over the years. And it was funny because I watched this clip. It's on social media. You could find it. I'm not going to show it strictly because of the fact that I don't want to get one of those nifty little letters from ESPN. You know how it goes. The big boys want to come after everybody nowadays. So I won't show it. But I will talk about it. A caller had called in to the mothership at ESPN. And the topic of discussion was the fact that, Michelle needs to kind of like pick a team in the NFL to be a fan of. She's tried to go after certain teams and things of that nature over the years. She just has never really had any success. Okay, fair enough. Rightfully so. But one listener did call in and proceeded to chastise her about just basically not being a Rams fan. And her response was pretty golden. If you want to see the full clip, go check out the full clip. It's all over X. It's all over Facebook. They've posted it all over every single, football fan group that has anything to do with St. Louis. So go check it out. But I'll give you the clip notes. After the listener caller had chastised Michelle Smallman about not being a fan of the Rams or what have you, her response was pretty epic. In a sense of, and this is obviously ad-libbed. This is not a quote for quote. More or less what she had said was, do you really understand what they did to my city? If you did, then you wouldn't be having this response to me. How dare you kind of response that she had to the caller. Do you understand what it is that they did? They could have left. We all kind of knew, deep down, we didn't want to accept it. We had held out hope that the NFL would step in, but what we didn't realize is that the NFL was working hat in hand with Stan Kroenke and the former St. Louis Rams in order to exit stage left. So, well, my left, but you're right. You get the idea. And at that point, you have to ask yourself a question. What is it that these people have a problem with us feeling the way that we feel in this market about football specifically? What I've learned over my, 30 some odd plus years of watching NFL football and being a student of the business aspect of how this whole entire entity is run, all of the exposés, the articles, the dirt digging that I've done over the years, specifically over the last decade since the Rams exodus from St. Louis. You ask yourself, what did we do wrong on our end? Well, there's several things that we could have done better. I've went into deep detail. If everybody wants more of a deep dive into it, I'm more than happy to get into that with you on another show. Just let me know in the comments or whatever. Just let me know if you want to have a big round table and go an hour plus long or whatever. We could do that, but it's stuff that I've done before. I've been on several podcasts over the years talking about this particular subject matter. The blissful ignorance of most NFL fans, what people need to understand is it's a lot like politics. You have your hard line left, you have your hard line right, and 20% is over here, and 20% is over there, and everybody else is in the middle. So 20, 20, 40, 60. That's the way it is. It's the way it is in the NFL. And you could break it down into more categories, and you could say, well, 20% is hardcore fans over here, and 20% are the hardcore fans that are, fanatical, that will go to every single game that they can go to. They dress up, they're just wild, right? It's their life, almost a livelihood to a certain extent. Then on the other side, your other 20%, you have the hardcore fans that watch every single game on Sunday, Saturday, whatever, Monday nights. They will watch every single game, and they partake in a lot of other different things within NFL football product. But then you have the 60% there in the middle. Those people are what I would consider fair weather-ish fans. It's really kind of where I have become at this point. I've fallen into that 60% definitively. But I would say this. A majority of those people in that 60% range, how many of those are betting on games? Comment down below if you're a sports bettor, if you like to sports bet on your NFL picks for either the week or the month or the year, however you do it. Everybody does it a little bit differently. Do you play fantasy football? How many leagues are you in? There's a lot of this that gets overlooked. When the Rams decided to move back to LA, it was because they solved a critical core component of a problem that they had in 1993, 1994. Internet was around, but it didn't really exist to the extent of what we even knew a few years ago. Streaming services didn't exist. There was only, closed circuit television. There was the great big huge satellite dishes that everybody would have in their backyard, things of that nature. There was some cable around in some of the bigger cities. But in rural areas, everybody had just analog television antennas. So you got your basic, television programming in that vicinity, if you were lucky, depending on how far away you were. Now, all that being said, they made their money off ticket sales, parking, game day sales, merch, concessions, a lot of stuff like that, right? At that point in time, in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, the Rams weren't doing that well. They were consistently getting drubbed by the 49ers in that division at that point in time. The Cardinals were out there doing sometimes okay, sometimes not so great. But the Rams were kind of in the middle of the pack. They weren't doing super great, but they weren't doing really god-awful bad either. They weren't making any money. They were losing their butts out there. They really were. They were getting just throttled. So they had to do something. They had to make a change. Same thing with the Los Angeles Raiders at the time. They had to do something. They had to make a change. Stadiums were promised. They didn't get delivered. Things got it was an absolute just bonkers scenario in the early to mid 90s out in Southern California in the way everything was going. Georgia Frontier tried to make a quick bounce to Baltimore, but was beaten there by Art Modell, the owner of the Browns, which in turn got sued. We all talk about the Cleveland lawsuit. I've got the whole lawsuit over here. And the settlement was made, and the Browns came back, and they became the Ravens, as we know it today. We also remember just a couple years prior that the Houston Oilers had made their intentions very well known that they were going to be leaving and going to Tennessee. There's a lot of stuff going on there. So then the Rams were left without a home. Where do they go? What do they do? Well, you've got a $300 million, 100% taxpayer-funded stadium that was at the time state-of-the-art, built in the city of St. Louis, that did not have a football team and was mad for football. The Rams had nowhere to go. So instead of the city of St. Louis going, okay, let's negotiate, let's get down to brass tacks and let's work a deal and get you in here, the then mayor and county executive at the time, which the mayor of St. Louis at the time was Freeman Bosley Jr., and the county executive at the time was Buzz Westfall, were specifically told, do whatever it takes to get a team here. We have to put a team in that building. We paid all this money for it. It's going to be political suicide if we don't. We have to make that money back. We spent money that we basically didn't have to get a team. We got to put a team in there. So when John Shaw and the Rams organization came in to negotiate, they just said, hey, you know what? Like any other negotiation, let's just throw crap at the wall, see if it sticks. And they did. And they're like, well, hey, we want all the parking. Well, okay. Yeah, sure. Oh, hey, we want, a 10-year out, in this 30-year lease. Every 10 years, we want a 10-year out. Okay. They just gave them everything they wanted to. So St. Louis has a lot to blame for what went on in that time frame. It's fascinating to me that these things continue to go on and continue to happen and be the way that they are. It's a short show today. I don't have a whole lot of interest in talking about the Cardinals right now at this point because of just what they've been continuing to do. They've been told by numerous people in media and in every other format to clean up their act and make some changes. They've refused to do it. Writing's on the wall, folks. Act accordingly. NFL season is starting. NCAA season is starting. We've got a lot of things to talk about. We got a lot of things to do. Make sure that you go over to fuelsportsnetwork.com. Check out everything going on over there. There's new articles going up all the time. And go ahead and add our social pages. Facebook, X, Instagram. We're working on the Instagram thing, but definitely go over to YouTube too as well. Thank you guys for tuning in this week. I'll see you next week. We'll have a standard show next week, but I've got so many things going on. We got to get things done. That's the way life is. Adios, everybody.